y'all, I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate, and we're Real Estate Elevated. We're bringing you another episode of I'm Moving to North Carolina, Now What? Today's episode is a shorts edition, and this one is something you're going to want to pay attention to. Is your home giving you cancer? So what we're going to specifically be talking about is radon. So radon is a colorless, odorless gas that exists here in the state of North Carolina, and it comes from the soil. Something that's really interesting about radon is your home may have it and your neighbor may not, or vice versa. It has to do with the soil composition, specifically looking at where the bedrock is located in the ground. Like here we have a lot of granite and things of that nature, and it can actually create radon, and it's a gas release that goes up into the surface area. Well, when you put a home smack dab on top of that, the radon then will sit in the lowest dwelling point of the house. It is heavier than air, so if you have a basement, typically that's where you're going to find the highest levels of radon. If you live on a crawl space, it could be a mixture between there and the first floor. And then slab homes, because there's nowhere else for it to go but in, it's definitely going to be sitting on that first floor and one level area. So when you're doing a home inspection, most of your inspectors will either A, do this themselves, or they'll outsource this to a radon company. They're going to bring in something called a radon test. It's something that's done over the process of about 72 hours because you're looking to actually get an average between the multiple days. Depending on the weather, the time of day, just kind of the atmospheric everything, you're going to see ebbs and flows in the levels of radon. But something that's really interesting to look at is not just the final average you get, but also some of those peaks and valleys, because that does mean that at certain points in the day, you are being exposed to the high levels. So why does radon even matter, right? Radon is actually the number one cause of lung cancer in non-smoking adults. Exposure to radon, especially at the levels that we're talking about, could essentially be like smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So it is pretty serious if it is present. So of course, many of you guys are asking, all right, so if I've tested for it, we've gotten the results back, what do the results mean and how do I know when I need to deal with it? So the EPA recommends that if it is above 4.0 picocuries, you're going to want to do what's called mitigation. So a mitigation system is actually pretty obscure looking. So if you're looking at the exterior of a home, typically you'll have your gas meter as well as your electronic devices hooked up with your HVAC and all that stuff on that like back corner or side of the home. A lot of times you're going to see it looks like white piping that kind of mushrooms out at one point and then follows the exterior of the home. So again, it depends on when the radon was caught as to where the radon mitigation system is placed. We'll get to new construction here in just a second. But often that's what you're looking for. So if you're walking the property, you're going to hear a very low hum coming from the fan in the mitigation system, because the whole point of the mitigation system is that it's pulling the radon from the inside of the home to the exterior and putting it back in the atmosphere. So it's removing it from the living environment. If you don't hear that low hum, it means it's probably not working. However, I do want to give a disclaimer that just because you hear the low hum does not mean it's working to the best of its efficacy. I have actually had some clients before where the radon system was installed. We could hear that it was working at the time of inspection, but then lo and behold, we did the actual radon test and it came back significantly above 4.0. Guys, do keep in mind there are certain parts of the triangle where the radon is so high, it may actually take either a stronger fan and system or even an additional fan and system depending on the levels or even the size of the home. When you start getting into these 4,000, 6,000 plus square feet homes, again, you're going to need a much stronger system to kind of resolve the issue. The other thing too that a lot of folks think is, okay, so if it's slightly over 4, does that mean it's safe? No, anything above 4 is actionable. You can actually still install a mitigation system even if it's slightly below that and present in the home, because it still means you do have radon present. Now, there are parts of the North Carolina area, but that don't necessarily have the same levels of radon. For example, at the coast, it's not quite as common to have high radon testing. It does not mean that it doesn't exist. It, again, boils down to the bedrock, not to get too scientific here. But in the triangle, we absolutely recommend getting it tested. I have had clients before that have popped as high as 28, which is extremely significant. In this case, it was a new construction home. So in that case, what what do? Well, you give the builder, just like you would with any other inspection, you give them the radon test. And in most cases, the builder is going to install the mitigation system before you go to the closing table. So what happens if it's a resale home? What obligation does the seller have? Well, first of all, on the disclosure statement, it does ask if there's ever been a history of radon. So if there's a mitigation system installed in the home, it is the seller's job to disclose that. And if not them, the listing agent is also required to disclose that. Now, if radon comes back high, that is a point of negotiation between the buyer and seller to decide who's going to pay for the system. It could be one or the other, or even a split cost between the two. But at the end of the day, you definitely want to get that taken care of before you move into the home. So guys, radon, that is the number one cause of lung cancer in non-smoking adults. You definitely don't want to expose your teeny tiny humans to it either. If you have any questions about radon, you can definitely do a quick Google search or talk to your local buyer's agent or inspector and get some more info on that. Be sure to like, share, and follow, and you'll get more quick tips and information on buying a home or selling a home here in the Triangle. I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate.